By the time the fighting finally stopped in 1918, millions of lives had vanished into the mud and industrialized slaughter of the trenches. The populations left behind looked out over ruined cities and shattered empires, experiencing a profound collective relief. After witnessing such devastation, people were convinced that humanity could never repeat a mistake of this magnitude. Political leaders gathered at tables like this to draft agreements that would prevent another catastrophe. They redrew global borders and designed the Treaty of Versailles. The architects of that treaty attempted to neutralize Germany by restricting its military and imposing massive financial reparations. They hoped that severe punishment would enforce responsibility and prevent future aggression. While the fighting stopped, the terms of the treaty embedded a sense of national disgrace. Ending the war without addressing this humiliation created the exact instability the architects had hoped to avoid. The 1920s offered a brief recovery as cities rebuilt and global trade resumed. This stability vanished with the Great Depression. Banks failed and unemployment surged, leaving millions without work or savings. Financial collapse quickly eroded public confidence. Families who lost everything stopped trusting the democratic systems that had failed to protect them. This vacuum of trust allowed radical political movements to gain a foothold in the political mainstream. Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party used this desperation to focus German anger on the betrayal of the post-war treaties. Hitler's rhetoric focused on immediate restoration. He promised economic recovery, rebuilt military strength, and the return of national pride. These emotional promises resulted in massive, highly disciplined mobilization, turning a fringe movement into a state power. In an environment of total systemic collapse, solutions that seemed unthinkable during stable times became increasingly attractive to a desperate public. Throughout the 1930s, European decision-making remained tethered to the memory of the First World War. Avoiding another conflict became the primary goal, leading to the strategy of appeasement, a deliberate attempt to maintain peace through diplomatic concessions. Leaders operated on the assumption that Germany was seeking a return to fairness rather than a total expansion of its borders. This chart shows the theory. As geopolitical pressure builds, a diplomatic concession is granted, and the tension safely dissipates into peace. The reality was the opposite. Instead of diffusing tension, each concession provided more resources for the aggressor, causing the demands to increase. Trauma from the past caused these leaders to project their own desire for stability onto a regime that was actively moving toward war. Hitler began by dismantling the treaty's military restrictions, testing how far he could push without facing resistance. Foreign governments responded with caution, prioritizing negotiation over the enforcement of post-war boundaries. These diplomatic delays gave the German military the years it needed to transform into a modernized, synchronized fighting force. With each successful demand, Hitler's confidence in the effectiveness of expansion increased. Every compromise weakened the strategic position of the democracies while strengthening the dictatorship. As these international crises rapidly accumulated year after year, the critical time available for any kind of peaceful negotiation simply began to run out. The policy designed to prevent a Second World War provided the exact time and resources necessary for that war to begin. The invasion of Poland in September 1939 ended the strategy of appeasement. Britain and France finally declared war, as the hope for a diplomatic solution collapsed. The invasion acted as the trigger, but the underlying tensions had been building for 20 years. The war resulted from a combination of unresolved resentment, economic ruin, political extremism, and repeated miscalculations. The road to 1939 was paved with specific, avoidable choices. Resentment was left to fester, economic warnings were ignored, and concessions were made in the hope that ambition had a limit. By the time the crisis became undeniable, the window for a peaceful solution had already closed.